Alright, hey, welcome back to another video. Today I want to go through how I go about making metal in Ableton. I'm going to show you exactly what I use, exactly how I process everything, and show you basically how I made this. So let's get right into it. Alright, so let's start from top to bottom. Now, first and foremost, I'm using Modern and Massive 2. I'm going to go ahead and just scroll through the mixing. You can route this however you want. So right now, I'll just slowly scroll through this so you can see how I've done it here if you want to copy it. It's pretty simple. I think I just used a preset and then I just routed it based on there. So you can just go into your Ableton, your routing, and your tracks. So if I went to like my kick, you can see that I have the channel selected as my drum MIDI. And then here I'm having the output that is the GGD, and it's coming here to the kick, and then you can do your snares, your toms, your cymbals, however you have it routed in here. But there's plenty of good presets in here that you can start off with. So like the default and the multi-output, you can start with something like that and then just start routing it based on whatever preset you choose. So for drums, I'm using this cool kick here. It's the Gretsch Brooklyn kick, and if you just want to keep it on here as I kind of cycle through these drums here. Okay, so let's get into how I post-process them. Within GGD, you can use some stuff here. I don't like this stuff as much. I think I kind of just kept what comes on the preset, but I like to do everything kind of post so I don't have to get back into the VST to adjust anything, maybe just some volume here and there. Okay, so first and foremost, let's go ahead and just look at our kick. Now, keep in mind that this is not going to be the whole kick sound because you have some going to your different room mic. Now, first and foremost, Kilohertz transient shaper attack. What is this? 57%. My pump is just over that at 58. Sustain is at -3. You just want like a curve like this, so it's basically just kind of where it's pumping it. We just want a really sharp attack here, that really sharp transient. A lot of people like Magnolia Park, A Day to Remember, people like them are using this type of sharp kick just to really break through the mix. So beat is at 81%, no sidechain, and then clipping on, that way it's not super distorting. If we sample our kick or just solo it, this is what it sounds like with just the kick, just this one channel, using some EQ on top of that, and then a little bit of kick reducer. This is just a preset in Ableton. So if you like pop over here, if you have a compressor on here, you can press this little dial here, and then it'll pull up exactly what pre-made presets Ableton already has built in. Drag that over here, adjust the threshold a little bit, and then the out. And then if you want, you can do the makeup too if it's not loud enough for you, but I have the volume turned down quite a bit, so we don't really need to do that. Okay, that's it for the kick. Just based on whatever kick you use and whatever drum library you might be using as well, you might want to adjust the EQ a little bit. I have this taken down right here because it's a little bit muddy. I also have this taken down because it just sounds kind of bad. Let's see if we solo it. Just like a frequency we don't need. So this could be your only problem here if it's getting in the way of maybe some vocals or guitar, whatever it is. I think it sits nicely in the mix just with a little boost. It makes it sound a little bit better. And then just a little bit of top end here just to kind of enhance that transient after the transient shaper. Snare. Taking down all that low end, boosting some of the high end, and this is just some compression, pretty basic on that front. Toms, I'm doing literally no processing at all. I don't really even use the toms. I don't really, like I do use them, but I don't really focus on them. This is what they sound like just as a tom track. They sound fine as it is. Maybe you could take a little bit of that mid kind of muddiness down. Let's even pop an EQ on there just to see what it sounds like. You could even do something like that. Spot cymbal, just taking down some of the low end here. In fact, we don't need anything from the cymbals below. Overheads, I got crazy with it here. Compression, again, just looking for any problem frequencies that you might have. I don't think I'm using any hi-hats in this one. But it's obviously going to mess with your other overheads like your crashes, your chinas, and stuff like that. So you're just taking down any frequencies that might be competing or just don't sound good. That way you have more room in your mix. Room mono, room close, taking down the low end here, and then some of the high end because we don't need all that extra. You can actually see what it sounds like here. And then without. In my opinion, I don't need all the drums layered like that. I can kind of get my individual sounds to sound good without having to layer the whole room close on top of it. So I'm just taking away some of those harsher frequencies where maybe synths or vocals or stuff might have some competition with. Room far, kind of the same deal. I am compressing this a little bit, and then I am using some of this high end. And this as a layer I think sounds better. That's why I chose to use this. But this is all going to be trial and error as well, just based on how you like for your drums. But this is just where I'm starting for it. And then crush. Mainly, I'm just taking down this because we have a sub below here, but you're not really going to hear that much. Taking down this, that way we're not competing with the guitars. I kind of left this here, but if you need to take down some problem frequencies, and then we're lowering that low end. One, because we took it from the previous track, but two, because I have the toms going through here. And I don't really need any more high information. And then snare reverb, no low end here. I have this turned really far down, so you don't really even hear this. I'm sure it's doing something, but not really utilizing it too much. So that's how the drums sound, and this is how they sound in full again. One thing too is make sure that you're messing with the humanize function here in Ableton, and then also if you want to, you can mess with the velocity. So if you select all of them, you can lower the velocity really low, so it's playing a little bit different of a note, but not too far off what the previous note was. So like what I'll do is I'll start usually my first hits on full velocity. That's maybe while my drums are turned up a little bit more than yours might be, and then I'll just adjust some random ones, and then once I have some random ones that I like, I'll use that random to kind of adjust the ones in between those ones that I drew. That way it's a little bit more interesting, adds some more variation, and then that humanize just offsets everything a little bit, so it sounds a little bit more real rather than just like you took it out of a plugin. Okay, now guitars I think is super subjective. What I do, because I don't play guitar, I would like to eventually, but for now just getting ideas down, I use 2 separate guitar plugins. You don't have to, just do whatever you need to. So Odin 3 is my first one. This one's actually working really good for me. I got a different guitar that will go through, but I think I just find myself coming back more to this. So if you're using Odin or whatever guitars you're using, find the right EQ settings that are going to fit in your mix. Maybe your voice is higher than mine, maybe it's lower. What's going to fit for you is obviously going to be the most important thing, but I have the humanize here. I'm just using the pan to rhythm DI. I don't think I'm really messing with anything here. I think the only thing within Odin 3 that's pretty cool that I might use is obviously the human noise is turned on, and the forced vibrato is pretty decent. For advanced, I think I have just the pick attack enforced. That way it sounds a little bit less digital. And then the auto slide, I have that turned off, but I have the slide speed up a little bit, so that way when we are doing bends and stuff like that, it sounds a little bit better. At least I think that's what it's doing. And the bend intensity is just going to matter based on what kind of bends you want to be doing. So, you know, I might even pump that up a little bit and just show you here. Honestly, I don't even think that's doing anything. So maybe it just depends on however much you have it in your clip. I don't know. Ableton's automation doesn't work all the time. Okay, so that's my main one. I'm using Saturator. I'm using the Fort Nameless, and I think I'm just using the Metal 2 preset. I'm not adjusting anything, I don't think. I think just the input mode is set to stereo, and then utility just from width. So I'm actually taking this down because I'm using 2 guitars, pan left and right. Now, the only thing that this pitch thing is doing is just adjusting it so that way all my MIDI clips are the same, since the input to Odin and our other plugins are a little bit different. So for my left and right guitar, I'm using Axure. This is a decent sampler type deal. I don't think it works as good, honestly. Every time you pop it in, you have to use or reload the library, and then it just doesn't sound as clean as Odin, in my opinion. Fort Nameless, Metal 3 for this one, just taking down some EQ, boosting a little bit of this, and that's mainly just that way when we double it up, we're taking down that frequency just so it sounds a little bit different from left to right, but we're just duplicating that. We're using a little bit of a different preset here, so the same one, but we just modified a little bit, and then together it puts 2 different sounds on 2 different channels to make it sound a little bit more wide. You can see it sounds a little bit of different characteristics, so just to add some stereo width. Now, for my basses, I'm using the Kraken Hybrid. For this, I think I'm just using a preset, the Gnarly 666, and then I have the saturator on. I'm taking down these mids, and then this distortion for it is really cool. So, for example, without it, and then with it, it reminds me a lot of like how Gideon processes their basses. They add like that cool top end that just sounds really distorted, but it also fills in some of the lacking sound that we have taken down with the guitars, which, speaking of guitars, we didn't actually get into this group. So we just had a little bit of EQ taking down the mids right here where it's kind of harsh, and then reverb, Pro Q3. Now these are my problem issues here, or problem areas. So I'm just taking down some of the stuff, and then I'm taking down all this low end on this side, and then all this high end on this side. Saturate on top of that, and then all these ones that are just like compressed audio effect racks, they're just compression with sidechain on them. So that's all it is. So your sidechain of choice. Now under my bass, I have a full sub. This is just a hip hop bass preset from Ableton. I have the EQ just taking down everything that is not low end, and then some saturator just to add some distortion back into it. Basses, I just have a saturator on top of the compression, which is just the sidechain, and that's it for the basses. So together. So I saw this from Chris Badan, layering the actual sub bass underneath the actual bass so it sounds actually full, and I think this does a pretty good job. So just blend it in to your liking. If you can't really see where it is on your monitors or speakers that you might be using, try using some headphones just to see where it's sitting. I had this originally like -7 because I couldn't tell on my speakers, and then when I listened on my headphones I was able to be like, oh okay, that's way too loud. So make your adjustments based on how you want your mix to sound, and you can get your low end really taken care of, and that whole 200 hertz and below will sound really nice and full. Now for me, I love doing synths into a lot of my metal that I do, so I like to just add like a couple layers, so mostly an atmosphere and like an ARP for like some tension. For me, I'm just EQing out all the low end again with some compression for that sidechain, and then I really like using BA1 because it adds like a lot of like ominous characteristics to it. So this is what this sounds like. For here, I'm just using this Hawaii pluck. I have the attack down a little bit, the decay up a little bit, sustain all the way down, release kind of in the middle here. And then you can just mess with this drive here and it makes it sound like kind of like spooky. Just add some distortion to it. We could even take this down a little bit more. And then for the BA1, for our pad, I'm using this Analog Brass Baby, which is the original preset that the plugin loads in with. But if you up the attack, up the decay, turn the sustain all the way up and the release up a little bit, you can get it to be like this cool pad. I'm using some chroma on top of it. This is just adding the C Phrygian dominant on it to make sure it's in key with the rest of the song. And then I'm using the rack for my Ableton Metalcore pack, the eerie one. And this is just adding some cool like characteristic to it. So if we listen to it without the rack and with the rack, it's adding some cool like spooky kind of detuned flavor
What?
to the track that makes it sound a little bit more eerie. So I think atmospheres really fill in a lot of the outside space that maybe your regular instruments aren't doing, and it's a good way to make, like, if you have like a chorus or if you have a breakdown or something and you want to fill it in, it's an easy way to do it. Now that's basically it for all the instruments. The last thing I have on here is just a Munson EQ. This is taking down any frequencies that are naturally irritating to the human ear. You can download this on like Google if you just search Munson EQ for your specific DAW, and then I just have mine adjusted a little bit just to make it sound a little bit better for me. And this also allows you to mix a little bit louder without it adding as much fatigue to you. But I just use this on all my masters, and I export with it too because I think if it can let me work louder, it can let other people listen to it louder as well. And then a little bit of saturator on top of it just to make my mixes louder, but also just to kind of push it to the end, get like a crunchy sound, especially for the metalcore that I'm looking for. So that's the whole project. If you have any questions about how I routed something or how I went about mixing something, just let me know in the comments below. Hopefully you learned something from the video, and we will see you again on the next one.